Welcome back. In this lecture and the next one, we're going to build the header part of the app. And that will include using SVG images as icons instead of an icon font. So you're going to learn what SVGs actually are, how to find, generate and use SVG sprites in HTML, how to change the color of an SVG image in CSS, and finally, you will learn some more advanced flexbox alignment techniques which we're going to need to lay out all the components in the header. So in our header, we basically have three main components. We have the logo here, okay? Then we have this search bar with this input field here and this icon. And then on the right side, we have something that I call the user navigation. So we have like bookmarks, a chat functionality, and the name of the user. Okay, so these three are the main components: logo, search bar, and user navigation. So let's mark that up in our HTML right now. So header. And we start with the image, which I simply call logo. And the source for this one is in the img folder and simply called logo. And as a description, I just use Trello logo. All right, so that's the first part. Next, we have a search bar, and for that, I'm using a form element, okay? And the action is just the hash symbol, so nothing happens, okay? Now in here, we want an input, which is called search input. And as you see, once again, I'm using the BEM notation here, okay? So search is my block, and then the element is the input separated with these two underscores, okay? Now we also have the placeholder here, which says search hotels. Okay, and then the button. And you can guess, this one is called search button. Now remember that in here, in the button, we actually had this little icon, this magnifying glass, so this icon here, right? So in the last Natures project that we built, and maybe in your projects that you've built for yourself, we've been using icon fonts, right? But this time we're going to do it differently, and we're going to use SVGs as icons, okay? Now, why are we actually moving away from icon fonts to SVGs? Well, there are several problems with icon fonts, like the fact that it's really just a hack to display icons, which are like images using a font. Also, icon fonts fail more often than you would think, and in that case, the browser just displays a black square or something like that on the screen. And that's really terrible. And there are actually other issues, like screen readers for blind people trying to read out the icon fonts, and of course failing to do so. Alright, and because of all that, right now it's actually considered a best practice to move away from icon fonts and to move to a better alternative. And that better alternative is of course SVG. Now what is SVG actually? Well, SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics, and it's just basically a way of writing vector graphics with code. But don't worry, we're not going to write any SVG code here for icons, okay? Instead, we're going to use a great app called iCommune. And so let's open that one, iCommune.io. And so it's just really a simple web app, okay? So let's move here to here where it says iCommune app. So here in the iCommune app, you can upload an icon font if you want. For example here, so if you have an icon font on your computer and want to convert it to SVGs, then you can do it in here, okay? But what's even better is that we can just select some icons from their free library, okay? So let's do that. So if you come down here, you have add icons from the library. Then you have all of these free libraries with these free icons, okay? So you can take a look at all of these. And the ones that I'm choosing are called InTypo. Okay, so InTypo Plus, because I really like these and I think they look great on our app. So we just hit add. And then from here, all we have to do is to select the icons that we actually want. Okay, and if we take a look at this finished app, we see that we actually need 10 icons. So these 4 icons here, then a star, then this bookmark, this chat, this location pin, this list item icon here, and then finally, of course, the magnifying glass, which is the one we're going to use next. Okay, so these 10 icons is the one that we need to select. And so here is one, here is the next one, then here is the plane, here is the chat, down here we have the house, and also the key down here. Let's see, the location, then here the magnifying glass, the map, and finally the star down here. Okay, so we have our 10 icons selected. You can see it here, we have 10, okay? Now if you wanted other icons or more icons, you could of course select as many as you wished, okay? So all we have to do now is to come here, generate SVG and more, and then we see our 10 icons that we selected. Then we hit here the settings, okay? So we see that there will be a class prefix called icon, and we don't want any PNGs, we just want SVGs, okay? So it says SVG here now, and now we can hit download and open it up. So when you open this folder, it gives you all this stuff here, which you really don't use, okay? So all we need are these SVG files here, and even more importantly, this file here. So symbol devs, and this is a so-called sprite file. So what is a sprite file? Well, it's simply an SVG file which contains all of these 10 SVG images in it. Okay, and so that's the one that we're actually going to use, because this way we only have to use one global file, which is this one here, and from there we can select each of the icons. And so this way we only have one HTTP request for one file instead of having to include all of these 10 different files. So icon sprites like this one here is the way to go, and that's how all professionals do it, okay? Also we have this HTML file here, which is just so that we can see the names of the icons. And actually this is not the right one. The one that we need is just demo. So these are the names of the icons that we can then use in HTML. So first let's get our icons here. So this entire folder and then this one here, and I'm going to copy it to the project folder. So Trello, IMG, and then I'm pasting it in here. All right, here we go. Now I'm going to call this one sprite, and actually I already have one sprite because I included it here because I already had it, okay? So I'm going to delete it and call this one sprite. So you should also delete the sprite file that you already had and then change this one here to sprite. And so that's the one that we're going to use. I'm also leaving this folder here with these initial files because we're going to need maybe one of them later, okay? So, and with this, we are ready to use this sprite SVG file. So let's go back to our code editor here and include it. Now, how do we actually do that in HTML? Well, we use the SVG element, which I'm going to call search icon. And then in here, we have to use something called use, okay? So use, and then an attribute called xlink : href. So that sounds a bit strange, but that's just how we can include the SVG file and then reference each separate icon in there, okay? So img sprite.svg, and that's the name of the sprite file. And now from here, we have to select the icon that we want. So let's see how it's called. And it's called icon magnifying glass. Let's copy that. And now we use hash and then the name of the icon. And that's actually it. So closing it, and here we go. So this is really the best way to include SVGs in HTML using a SVG sprite like we did. And that's because this way we can actually change the color of each of the icons using CSS. And I'm going to show you how in a little bit, okay? Now another thing that I need to tell you is that using SVGs like this with the xlink href attribute is only going to work on a web server. So only on a web server you will be able to see this sprite SVG file. But since we're doing that actually, okay, we are using a web server, which is this local one here. So this localhost server, and that's why it actually works. And so here is our SVG icon, right? So everything works perfectly, and we're now ready to start using SVGs in our HTML. And that's a great step. Now this is of course not formatted here at all, but we're going to take care of that later. And another advantage actually of SVG is that it makes it really easy to format these icons. With icon font, it was always really hard to put them exactly the way we wanted, but with SVGs, that problem is gone, and it's actually super easy. Okay, and now finally, the user navigation. So we're using the nav HTML5 element here for the navigation. And then in here, I'm going to put 3 boxes. So let me show that to you. So 1 box for each of these. This box, and this box. Okay, so let's do that. So user nav, the name of the block, nav icon, and then in here our SVG. Now actually this is not the name that I wanted here. Let me change that. So icon box. So now it's okay. So this is a box where the icon will sit. And this one is the user nav icon. And now let's use the use again. So xlink href and img sprite. And this time let's check it out. We will want to use the, here it is. Let's close the icon moon. So we want the one called icon bookmark, and then next the one called icon chat. So icon bookmark, and next time the icon chat. Let's actually copy that already. Okay, so icon chat. Give it some space here. All right. And actually we also want like this notification indicator here, right? So this small notification circle here, okay? So that's just a span element, which I'm calling user nav notification. And here let's put a 7, and then in the other one, let's put 13. Okay, and now the next box, user nav, and this one I'm calling simply the user. So if you have an image here, as you remember, and this one is called, I think it's the one just called user, and that's actually a picture of myself. So user photo, and then just a span for the name. So user nav, username, and then my name in here. And that is our HTML markup for the header. So let's check it out now. And that's of course terrible at this point. So let's try to do some quick formatting here, especially of the images and icons, which are now like really huge. Okay, so we should fix that. So let's now open our components file here, because from now on, I'm going to write all the code for all these smaller components right here into this file. Now this stuff that we're going to put here, these are not really components in the meaning that I gave them in the last project. So they're not necessarily really reusable across projects, but I'm still calling them simply components here, because that's the easiest way to do it here right now. Okay, so this one is simply called logo. And what I want here is a height of 3.25 rem. Okay, so remember once again that this project is not really about CSS architecture and all that stuff that I showed you in the last project, because these are really important. But in this project, I just want to focus on Flexbox and on building this app. All right, so that is the logo. And let me actually put a comment here on each of these so-called components. So just a line of these slashes here to separate them. And then I simply say logo. Okay. And now I do the same thing for the search box. And down here the same thing for the user nav. So search, and in here we have the input. And of course it's 2 underscores. And the button, of course. Let's see if we have something else here. So we have input, button. Oh, and here is icon as well. So, all right, icon. And now for the user navigation, let's also put the selectors here already. So user nav, and here we have the icon box. And let's see what else we have. So icon box, then we have icon here, notification, user, user photo, and username. So there's a lot of stuff to select here. So icon box, icon, we have the notification, the user photo, and finally the user name. So that's a lot to format here. But what I want to start with for now is these huge parts, okay? So we already gave the icon here a smaller size, but we want to do the same with this magnifying glass and with these two icons, and of course with this user image here, okay? So let's do that right now. So let's start with the search icon here. Now, how do we actually format an SVG icon? Well, it's really easy compared to icon fonts. All we have to do is to set its height and its width in order to size it the way we want. So let's set to RAM for both the height and the width. Check it out. And here we go. And now it's really small. And now here for the user nav icons as well. And these here should be slightly bigger. So I'm putting 2.25 rem for both the height and the width. 2.25 rem. And now finally, the user photo. Let's give it a height of 3.75 rem. Okay? And since we're at it, I'll also make it a round, so border radius of 50%. And then let's see how it looks like right now. That looks better, but still far from perfect. So in the next lecture, we're going to take care of actually aligning all of these items properly, using of course Flexbox, and then to style everything so that it looks great, just like this here. Okay? So that's what we're going to take care in the next lecture. See you then.